The rain had just stopped when Emily Carter arrived in the small coastal town of Bridgehaven. The streets were slick, the ocean air cool, and the scent of salt hung in the breeze. She parked in front of a small cottage with white shutters and a porch that faced the dunes. It was quiet, too quiet, but that was exactly what she needed. After 12 years of marriage, 2 years of pretending to be fine, and 1 divorce that left her questioning everything, Emily wanted peace. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. She just drove until her heart calmed down enough to think. Bridgehaven looked like the kind of town time had forgotten. Small shops lined the main street, an old bookstore, a bakery with faded signs, a coffee shop that smelled of cinnamon. The people waved to strangers. The ocean could be heard from almost anywhere, a steady hum in the background. Emily told herself she'd stay for a few weeks, just long enough to breathe and figure out what to do next. But the first few days were harder than she expected. Silence wasn't always peaceful, it could be heavy too. She spent her mornings walking along the beach, and her afternoons reading on the porch. But at night, the emptiness crept in. One morning, as she sipped coffee outside a small cafe, she noticed a man painting across the street. He stood near the pier with an easel, his brush moving quickly, confidently. He looked to be in his 60s. Tall, gray hair swept back, sunburned cheeks, eyes that seemed to see everything and judge nothing. He painted like someone who'd made peace with the world. People passing by greeted him warmly. He laughed with them, offered a friendly nod, and kept painting. Even from where she sat, Emily could feel something calm about him. He didn't seem to rush through anything. She saw him again the next day, and again the day after that. He was always there, same spot, same focus, always smiling when someone spoke to him. There was a quiet strength in his presence. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was simply there. One morning, after watching him for far too long, she decided to say hello. She walked across the street, her heart oddly nervous. "Hi," she said softly. "Your paintings are beautiful." He looked up and smiled, his eyes kind. "Thank you. You're new in town, aren't you?" "Yes," she admitted. "Just visiting for a while." "Well," he said, dipping his brush in blue paint. Bridgehaven has a way of keeping visitors longer than they plan. "I'm Jack, by the way." "Emily," she said. "Nice to meet you, Emily. Sit if you like. The sea's better company when shared." She hesitated, then sat on the edge of the wooden bench beside him. For a few moments, they didn't speak. Jack painted, and Emily watched the waves hit the shore. The rhythm of it all, the wind, the colors, the quiet, felt strangely healing. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm and steady. "You look like someone who's trying to remember what peace feels like." His words startled her, but she didn't deny it. "I guess I am." Jack didn't ask why. He just nodded. "Good. Most people forget to try." They talked a little after that. Nothing deep, just small things about the town, the best places to eat, the kind of sunsets Bridgehaven was known for. But something in that conversation lingered with Emily. She didn't feel judged. She didn't feel like she had to explain herself. When she left, Jack said, "See you tomorrow, maybe." And she surprised herself by smiling. Maybe. From that day on, they kept running into each other. Sometimes by accident, sometimes on purpose. She found herself going to the cafe around the same time every morning, knowing he'd be nearby. They talked more. He told her he used to be an architect before retiring. He'd lost his wife a few years back, and painting had helped him find light again. When she passed, he said quietly one day, "I thought life was done teaching me new things." But turns out it had a few surprises left. Emily listened without interrupting. She felt something shift inside her, not pity, but understanding. Pain had its own language, and Jack spoke it fluently, but softly. He didn't wear his loss like a wound. He carried it like wisdom. One evening, as the sun set over the water, Emily saw him sitting by the pier, painting the orange sky melting into the sea. She walked over and asked, "How do you paint like that? Like the world is still beautiful no matter what happens?" Jack smiled. "Because it is. You just have to look past the noise to see it again." His answer stayed in her mind all night. For months, she had let her life feel like an ending. But now, for the first time, it felt like maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just changing shape. The next morning, she woke up early and drove to the shore. The sky was pink and quiet. She took off her shoes and let the water touch her feet. It was cold, but it made her feel awake, alive. She laughed, a small sound, surprised by her own voice. Behind her, Jack's voice said, "That's the sound of someone coming back to life." She turned and saw him holding 2 cups of coffee. "You were up early," he said, handing her one. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "I wanted to see the sunrise." "Good choice," he said. "It's one of the few things in life that never disappoints." They stood together in silence, watching the light stretch across the water. The waves caught the sun and threw it back in golden fragments. For a moment, Emily forgot all the pain she'd carried. It didn't vanish, but it felt lighter, as if the sea had taken a small piece of it away. Jack glanced at her and said, "You remind me of myself after I lost my wife. I thought I was done feeling anything, but life has a strange way of proving us wrong." Emily looked at him, her heart full of quiet gratitude. "Maybe that's what I needed to remember," she said softly. "That I can still feel," he smiled. "That's how it starts." And in that moment, under the morning light, Emily realized she hadn't just met a kind neighbor. She'd met someone who was teaching her how to live again. One gentle day at a time. She didn't know where it would lead or how long she'd stay. But for the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of not knowing. She just wanted to see where this new chapter would go. One sunrise, one conversation, one heartbeat at a time. That morning marked the beginning of something quietly beautiful, an unexpected friendship that would change both their lives in ways neither could see coming. The days in Bridgehaven began to move with an easy rhythm. Emily found herself settling into the small town's quiet pulse, and more, Jack became part of that rhythm. Every morning, she'd walk down to the pier with a cup of coffee, and without fail, he'd already be there, painting, smiling, and greeting her with that calm warmth that made the world feel a little softer. It was strange how quickly she had started looking forward to those moments. She didn't think she'd ever feel that kind of peace again after her divorce. But with Jack, things felt simple. Jack had a way of noticing small things. The way the wind shifted before the rain, the reflection of clouds in the water, the faint sadness in her eyes when she thought no one was looking. He never pried, but sometimes his silence spoke louder than questions. One morning, as she sat beside him watching him paint, she said quietly, "You really see things, don't you?" He smiled without looking up. "You'd be surprised what you notice when you stop rushing." Emily laughed softly. "I've been rushing my whole life. I don't even know how to stop." Jack set down his brush. "Then maybe that's what you came here to learn." His words settled deep in her heart. For the first time, Emily realized she hadn't come to Bridgehaven just to escape her old life. She'd come because she needed to find herself again. A week later, she began helping at the local cafe where she first saw Jack. The owner, Nora, was kind and talkative, always telling stories about the town's past. "Jack," she said when Emily mentioned him one morning, "he's been painting here for years. Used to be an architect in New York. Lost his wife a while back. Still misses her, but he hides it behind those paintings." That night, as Emily walked home, she thought about what Nora said. She couldn't imagine losing someone after a lifetime together. But somehow that pain had shaped Jack into someone peaceful, not bitter. Maybe that's why she felt drawn to him, because he understood loss, yet still found beauty in life. One afternoon, Jack invited her to see his art studio. It was a small shed near the cliffs overlooking the sea. Inside, the walls were covered with paintings, seascapes, sunsets, people walking hand in hand. Each one carried a feeling like a quiet story frozen in color. Emily stood there, speechless. "They're beautiful," she whispered. Jack nodded, standing beside her. "They're pieces of my days. Every brushstroke is a memory, some painful, some healing." She pointed to one painting, a woman sitting by the ocean, her hair blowing in the wind. "Is that your wife?" He smiled faintly. "Yes, her name was Lily. She loved the ocean. said it reminded her that life never stops moving. Emily felt her throat tighten. You must miss her. Every day, he said softly. But missing her doesn't hurt like it used to. Now it just reminds me how lucky I was to love her. There was a silence between them. Gentle, not heavy. Emily felt tears sting her eyes. She envied that kind of love, the kind that still lived on in memories. Jack noticed her quietness. You've lost something too, haven't you? She hesitated, then nodded. Not someone through death, but through life. My marriage ended. I thought we were happy, but one day, I realized I was living beside someone who'd stopped seeing me. I left before I forgot who I was completely. Jack listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, Then maybe it's good you left. Sometimes walking away isn't giving up. It's starting over. Emily smiled weakly. You make it sound simple. He shrugged lightly. It's not simple, but it's possible. After that day, their friendship deepened. They spent more time together, sharing stories, cooking dinner at her cottage, watching storms roll in from the ocean. There was nothing romantic between them yet, but something unspoken lingered in the air. A connection built not on attraction, but on understanding. They were two souls who'd been broken and were slowly learning how to heal again. One evening, Emily found Jack sitting outside his studio, staring at the horizon. She joined him, and for a while, they watched the waves crash against the rocks. You ever think about what's next? She asked. He smiled faintly. All the time, but not in the way I used to. I used to plan everything. Career, family, even vacations. Now I just wake up and ask myself, what can I be grateful for today? That's enough. She looked at him, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. You make it sound easy to be happy. It's not easy, he said, turning to her, but it's worth trying. A few days later, Emily received a call from her ex-husband, Ryan. His voice brought back a flood of old emotions. Anger, sadness, confusion. He said he wanted to talk, maybe even try again. You left too fast, Emily. Maybe we could fix things, he said. But as she listened, she realized something had changed. She wasn't the same woman who left that house months ago. The thought of going back didn't feel comforting anymore. It felt like stepping into a cage she had already escaped. She ended the call quietly, saying, I hope you find peace, Ryan. But I already have. That night, she went to Jack's studio. He looked up from his painting and immediately saw the look in her eyes. You look like you just made a hard choice, he said gently. I did, she replied. But for the first time, it feels like the right one. Jack smiled. That's how you know you're growing. She exhaled, feeling a mix of relief and peace. You've helped me more than you know, Jack. He looked at her kindly. You helped yourself. I just reminded you what's already inside. As the sun sank behind the waves, Emily felt something shift between them. It wasn't romance. It was something deeper. A quiet bond formed through shared pain and renewed hope. They were both learning how to live again, how to let light back in after loss. Before she left that night, Jack said, You know, I used to think my best days were behind me. But lately, I'm starting to wonder if that's not true. Emily smiled softly. Maybe the best days are the ones we don't plan for. He nodded. Maybe so. As she walked home through the twilight, she thought about everything he'd said. Life had a strange way of breaking you, then sending someone along to help you remember how to stand. Jack wasn't just her neighbor or friend. He was proof that healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant learning to see beauty again. Emily didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, she didn't need to. She felt alive, grounded, and ready to start again. And deep down, she knew. Whatever happened next, her life had already begun to change in ways she'd never expected. Summer arrived in Bridgehaven, painting the little town in warm colors and salty air. The tourists started coming in, families with sun hats, artists with sketchbooks, and couples walking along the pier. But for Emily, this summer felt different. It wasn't the ocean breeze or the laughter in the streets. It was the quiet joy that came from feeling alive again, and a big part of that came from Jack. He had become a steady presence in her days. Sometimes they'd spend mornings walking Max, Emily's dog, along the shoreline, sharing stories about the lives they'd left behind. Other days, they'd sit at the cafe, sipping coffee and talking about art, books, or memories that used to hurt, but now somehow didn't. Jack never tried to fix her. He simply listened. And in that listening, Emily found healing. One morning, as she helped Nora arrange flowers outside the cafe, she saw Jack across the street. He was standing in front of a gallery window, talking to a woman who looked about his age. She had short blonde hair and an elegant air. Something in Emily's chest tightened unexpectedly. It wasn't jealousy exactly, but it was close. She watched as the woman laughed, touching Jack's arm lightly before walking away. Jack turned and noticed Emily watching. He smiled, but she quickly looked down, pretending to fix a vase. That evening, as she passed by his studio, Jack called out, "Hey, you okay? You seemed quiet earlier." Emily forced a smile. "Just a busy day, that's all." Jack studied her for a moment. "You saw me talking to Claire, didn't you?" She looked surprised. "I didn't mean to stare." He chuckled softly. "Claire runs the art gallery in town. She's helping me organize an exhibition. She's an old friend, nothing more." Emily felt a strange relief, followed by embarrassment. "I wasn't thinking anything," she said quickly. Jack smiled knowingly. "You don't have to explain. It's okay to care." Those words lingered in her mind long after she went home. She hadn't realized how much she cared until he said it. That night, as she sat by her window watching the stars, she thought about how easily he'd become part of her life, like sunlight slipping through a half-open curtain. A week later, Jack's exhibition was announced. The whole town buzzed with excitement. The gallery was small but charming, with white walls and the faint scent of oil paint. When the evening arrived, Emily dressed in a simple white dress and went to support him. The room was full, locals, tourists, even a few art collectors from the city. Jack stood by his paintings, greeting everyone with that easy grace she admired. When Emily approached, his face lit up. "You came," he said warmly. "Of course. I wouldn't miss it." He guided her to one of the larger paintings, a breathtaking seascape with deep blues and streaks of gold light breaking through clouds. "This one's called When the Heart Learns to Breathe Again," he told her. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It feels peaceful." "That's what healing feels like," he said softly. As people admired his work, Emily watched him with quiet pride. She could see how much he'd grown since she met him, how his grief had turned into something meaningful. But what she didn't realize until that night was how much she had changed too. Later, as the evening wound down, Jack found her outside on the patio, leaning against the railing. "Thank you for coming," he said, standing beside her. "You should be proud. Everyone loved your work," he smiled, looking out at the sea. "It's not about the praise anymore. It's about sharing something real." There was a pause, and then he looked at her. "You've been good for me, Emily. I didn't realize how closed off I'd become until you came along." She met his eyes, feeling her heartbeat quicken. "You helped me remember what it's like to feel again." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them carried something unspoken but undeniable. Then Jack looked away, exhaling. "Sometimes I wonder if it's too late to start over," he murmured. Emily shook her head gently. "It's never too late. Maybe we just need the right reason." Their eyes met again, and this time, neither looked away. Over the next few weeks, things between them shifted subtly. They still spent time together, but the air was different now, warmer, filled with quiet anticipation. One evening, Jack invited her to the lighthouse at the end of the pier, a place he said helped him think. The sun was setting, painting the sky in orange and rose. "Do you ever think about what makes people find each other?" Emily asked as they watched the waves crash below. Jack nodded slowly. "I think sometimes people meet exactly when they're supposed to, when they're ready to see life differently." She smiled faintly. "You make it sound like fate." "Maybe it is," he said, glancing at her. "Or maybe it's just grace, life giving us another chance." The wind picked up, brushing her hair across her face. Jack reached out instinctively, tucking a strand behind her ear. The touch was gentle, almost hesitant, but it sent a quiet spark through both of them. Emily's breath caught. For a heartbeat, time seemed to pause. The ocean, the wind, the fading light. Everything felt still. But Jack stepped back slightly, his voice low. "I don't want to rush something that feels this real." Emily nodded, her voice soft. "Neither do I." They walked back to town in silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful. Two souls quietly learning how to trust again. As summer faded into early autumn, Emily realized she had stopped counting days. Life no longer felt like waiting for something to happen. It was happening. She found joy in small things, the sound of rain, the smell of fresh paint, the laughter of strangers passing by. And in those moments, Jack was often there beside her. One evening, Nora asked Emily, "So, are you and Jack?" Emily laughed softly. "We're something. I don't know what to call it yet, but it's something real." Nora smiled knowingly. "That's all that matters." That night, Emily thought about how far she'd come. When she first arrived in Bridgehaven, she was lost, broken, and scared of her own silence. Now she had found peace, and maybe even love, in the most unexpected place. But as life often does, it had one more twist waiting. A few days later, Jack received a letter that seemed to shake him. Emily found him sitting alone by the sea, the letter clutched in his hand. He looked up when she approached, his expression unreadable. "It's from my daughter," he said quietly. "We haven't spoken in years." Emily sat beside him. "What did she say?" Jack sighed. "She wants to see me. She's moving back to the city and wants me to visit. I should be happy, but I don't know. I'm scared of losing this peace I've found here." Emily looked at him, understanding the fear all too well. "Maybe you don't have to choose. Maybe peace isn't a place. It's something you carry with you." He looked at her then, eyes filled with emotion. "You always know what to say," she smiled gently. "Maybe because I needed to hear it too." As the tide rolled in and the sky turned dark, Emily realized this moment, quiet, raw, honest, was what love really looked like. Not perfect, not certain, but real. She reached out, resting her hand over his. "Whatever happens next, Jack, I'm glad we found each other." He turned his hand, fingers closing softly around hers. "Me too, Emily, more than you'll ever know." And for the first time in years, both of them sat together, unafraid of the unknown, because for once, their hearts had learned to breathe again. Autumn arrived quietly in Bridgehaven. The leaves turned golden, the air grew crisp, and the smell of the sea mixed with the scent of wood smoke. Emily had always loved this season. It felt like a soft reminder that endings could also be beautiful. But this year, the change carried something deeper. Jack was leaving for the city to meet his daughter. It was something he needed to do, but it also meant saying goodbye, at least for a while. On the morning of his departure, Emily met him by the pier. The waves rolled gently against the shore, and the wind tugged at her scarf. Jack stood beside his truck, suitcase by his side. He smiled when he saw her, though his eyes carried the weight of everything unspoken. "I wanted to say goodbye properly," she said quietly. He nodded, his voice soft. "You don't have to. You already have." They stood there for a moment, neither knowing how to end something that didn't feel like an ending. Emily finally spoke, her voice steady. "You should go. She's waiting for you. This is your chance to make things right." Jack looked at her, his expression tender. "You've given me more courage than you know." He reached out, brushing his hand against her cheek, in a gesture full of warmth and restraint. "I'll be back," he said. "I don't know when, but I will," she smiled faintly. "I'll hold you to that." Then he was gone, his truck disappearing down the winding road, leaving behind the echo of promises and the scent of sea air. Emily stood there until the sound faded, then turned back toward town, her heart full but aching. Days turned into weeks. She threw herself into her art classes again, teaching children how to paint sunsets and dream beyond the edges of paper. Sometimes she would walk past Jack's studio and pause outside, the windows covered now, the silence inside too deep. She missed him, his voice, his laugh, the way he looked at life like it was still worth discovering. One evening, as she sat by the window painting, Nora stopped by with coffee. "Still no word from him?" she asked gently. Emily shook her head. "No, but I think he's where he needs to be. Maybe that's enough." Nora smiled knowingly. "You love him, don't you?" Emily didn't answer right away. She looked out at the sea, calm and endless. "I think I do," she finally said. "But it's not the kind of love that needs to hold on. It's the kind that hopes quietly." Winter came early that year. The town turned quiet, wrapped in gray skies and the sound of distant waves. Emily kept busy, helping Nora decorate the cafe for the holidays, organizing an art fair for the local kids, and pretending she wasn't waiting. But deep down, every time the bell above the cafe door rang, her heart jumped a little. Then, one snowy evening, she stepped outside to close the cafe when she heard someone say her name. "Emily." She turned, and there he was, Jack, standing under the soft glow of the streetlight, snow dusting his coat and hair. For a second she couldn't move. Then she smiled, tears springing to her eyes. "You came back," he nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I told you I would." She walked toward him, her heart pounding. "How was it? Did you see her?" Jack nodded. "I did. It wasn't easy. We talked for hours. There were tears, a lot of them. But we're trying again. I realized that sometimes you have to face what broke you if you want to start living again." Emily felt tears slip down her cheeks. Not from sadness, but from something gentler. Relief, maybe. "I'm so proud of you." He looked at her, his eyes warm. "I wouldn't have done it without you. You reminded me what it means to feel alive." They stood there in the falling snow, the world around them quiet and still. Finally, Jack spoke again. "I came back because I realized something else, too. I don't want to just exist anymore. I want to live. And when I think of living, I think of you." Emily's breath caught. "Jack," he stepped closer, his voice low but certain. "You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know." For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, the past behind them, the future wide open. Then Emily smiled, a soft, trembling smile. "You took your time," he laughed quietly. "I had to make sure my heart was ready. Now it is." That night, they walked through the quiet streets, talking like they used to, about art, life, and the strange ways people heal. It didn't feel like a grand romance or a movie ending. It felt real, steady, and right. In the weeks that followed, life settled into a new rhythm. Jack reopened his studio, this time inviting others to paint with him. He called it the Second Chance Studio. Emily helped him design the space, filling it with light, warmth, and colors that spoke of hope. Together they started a small art program for the town's youth, teaching them not just how to paint, but how to express what they couldn't always say out loud. Sometimes, after everyone had gone, Jack and Emily would sit by the window, watching the sunset over the sea. They didn't need big words or grand gestures, just quiet moments where everything made sense. One evening, as they closed the studio, Jack handed her a small canvas. "I made this for you," he said. She turned it over, and her breath caught. It was a painting of the two of them sitting by the lighthouse, the ocean stretching endlessly behind them. The title read, "When Love Finds Its Way Home." Emily looked up, eyes shimmering. "It's beautiful," Jack smiled softly. "So are you." She laughed gently, shaking her head. "You've gotten better at saying things like that." "I've had a good teacher." They stood there, the golden light from the setting sun filling the room. For the first time in years, Emily felt completely at peace. Not because life was perfect, but because she had found someone who understood her silence, her scars, and her strength. As the days turned to months, the story of Emily and Jack became a quiet legend in Bridgehaven. People would see them walking along the pier, sharing coffee at the cafe, or painting by the shore. They weren't the kind of couple who made grand declarations. They simply lived, loved, and reminded everyone around them that life, no matter how broken it seemed, always offered another beginning. On a warm spring morning, Emily stood by the sea, watching the waves dance in the sunlight. Jack joined her, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" she asked. He smiled. "Every day." She leaned against him, feeling the rhythm of his heartbeat. "We found life again, didn't we?" He nodded, his voice quiet but full of emotion. "We did. And we'll keep finding it, one sunrise at a time." The ocean shimmered before them, endless and alive. And in that moment, with the wind in their hair and the sound of waves below, Emily realized something beautiful. Sometimes the person who reminds you how to live isn't the one who rescues you, but the one who simply stands beside you until you remember how to rescue yourself. And with that, the story of Emily and Jack came full circle, a story of loss, rediscovery, and the quiet, enduring power of love that truly makes us feel alive again.